you said two things that are interesting to me. One, you talked about getting lost in emotion, and on the other side, having like a certain witness that stands above all of that, and kind of like that witness can feel acceptance for whatever is happening. And then you also said, you talked about taking refuge in the mind. And I wanted to share personal experience and then ask you which of the two you think this is. So I've had intense just like life experiences recently, like just going through stuff with family and so on, just like interpersonal stuff happening. And in this process, of course, a lot of emotions come up. And what I've noticed, and I've noticed this in the past, when something intense happens, I have like a little part in my head that's like maybe feels a certain, like feels like separate, and it feels maybe even a kind of like joy or glee for experiencing something this kind of like crazy or fucked up. And that kind of like on one hand sounds like, hey, maybe it's good because I'm not getting completely lost in the story or in the game or in the emotion. But then on the other hand, while it's happening, I always feel shame for not being able to completely be lost in the story, because I'm like, am I being callous by staying out of the emotion fully, or am I maybe not callous is one good way to describe it, or am I being numb by still keeping that part of me that stays outside?
This is just self-judgment. So the only thing that is worth paying attention to is the direction of your attention. So if you can, and if you do, give attention to direct emotional experience, to direct sensation, to the sensate experience of having this emotion directly, then you're doing great. Don't worry about it. And actually, every time that you realize that you're in the mind and you kind of ignore the feeling, this is an opportunity to take the attention away from the mind into the feeling.
Okay.
So when you're truly lost in the story of the mind, you don't know it. Just like when you doing concentration meditation and you forgot to focus on the breath and you start thinking and fantasizing and planning again, you don't know it until you remember, and it's like, oh wow, we were doing the breathing and now I'm thinking, okay, let me take the attention again to the breathing. So every time this happens, that's great. That's the moment of continued practice. At some point of time, it uh, as you do it, it actually like becomes sort of continuous. You continually feel, uh, and the mind still blabbers also continually. But what happens is that the sensate experience becomes kind of the foreground of your experience, while the mind blabbering becomes the background, right?
Yeah.
So if that's what's happening, forget like what the mind is telling you. Like the mind is going to tell you all sorts of different things. It doesn't matter, right? So if you can feel the things in the foreground, and the mind is talking in the background, he will say it will say many things. It will say you're doing everything wrong, you're spiritually bypassing, you're not enlightened, you don't engage with emotion enough. It's going to criticize you left and right? But for as long as it stays in the background, also just notice what comes up with this criticism. There will probably also be some some anger,
Yeah.
some feeling of
Shame. Yeah.
exactly. So it's just a story around the experience. And as you notice, the stories morph, the stories change, and invariably, when we embark on the spiritual path, at some point of time, they become spiritual stories.
Yeah.
Okay, You were telling yourself how you're failing in all aspects of your life, and now kind of you see them all as petty and not very important, and now you focus spiritually. Now the mind is going to be telling you how you're failing spiritually, how you're failing in spiritual practice, how you're doing it wrong. It happens to almost everybody. At some point of time, it becomes enlightened, stories like, are you enlightened? Are you not enlightened? Like things like that. So just like we compare ourselves, for example, in the world with other people on the dimensions of sex appeal or fame or monetary success, and when we become spiritual and we start undergoing the transformation, the mind begins to compare our spiritual attainments to other people. Am I more equanimous? Am I less equanimous? Am I more insightful? Oh, I have ego, and like they have ego. So the same drama starts playing out with in different words. There's usually less drama at this point, and for some people, there's just pretty much the same amount of drama, and they just update the vocabulary. But it's the same process. So the only thing that you should be concerned with is the direction of your attention, nothing else. The stories can be entertaining, but the really important part about the stories is the essential experience that they come with. Does it make sense?
Makes very much sense. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very
Well, that's
much.
okay.